Hey girl, what you gonna do tonight? I've got my mama's car keys and you've got a ticket to ride.
Hello, and welcome to Your Favorite Flick, a podcast where each episode we celebrate a movie that my guest loves. We aren't here to be critics, we're here to be fans. I'm sorry to say we had some tech challenges with the recording of our show's biggest fan, Phil Murray, talking dazed and confused. We have sapped the llamas responsible, replaced them with alpacas, and sacked those as well. We're going to get Phil on real soon, I promise. Thankfully, we had an amazing backup option to move up in the schedule in Van Hughes talking Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Lots of us have favorite movies, but few of us have created opportunities to live their favorite movies in quite the way that Van has. Van is an actor, singer, and musician who performs his own music and creates film scores. His single, Location, is now available for streaming and download wherever you get your music. We'll include a link in the show notes. Let's get down to it. Van Hughes, welcome to the show. It is great to have you today.
Thanks, Brad. Happy to be here and very honored that you asked me to talk about my favorite film.
So, before we get into today's movie, which I know we'll have a lot to say about, let me ask you what first activated you as a movie fan?
Wow. I think it goes back to a little personal history about myself. I lived in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, when I was 2 years old to when I was 5 years old. I went to kindergarten there before coming back to the States. My grandparents that adopted me worked as civil servants on the base in Norfolk, where I'm from, and my dad took this job to live in Cuba, right? And when we were there, this is the mid 80s, the 1980s. There wasn't much of American culture to be found there. There were very few TV stations, radio. And so my mom would get her friends from the United States to tape things off TV or tape them from the Blockbuster rental or whatever, and then mail the VHSs to Cuba.
Oh, wow.
And so I would just wear these tapes out. And I think like that was the beginning of like being fascinated with stories and the visual medium of film and just all the different styles. But yeah, I think that was the beginning of like being obsessed with like the fantasy of film, but also like wanting to step inside it.
What were some of those early movies? Do you remember?
Oh, for sure. Well, one is the one we're going to be talking about, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I believe on that same tape was Pippi Longstocking. I think it was like some like remake TV movie of it that came out in the 80s. California Raisins, Meet the Raisins, the TV special.
For people who weren't alive yet in the 80s, which I know is some of the audience, the California Raisins were stop motion animated raisins that were in advertisements and then became the single biggest thing in the history of pop culture somehow.
Yeah, it was wild. I think the whatever raisin company it was a Sunmaid or something, but they spent like 300 grand to make the first commercial and it just took off, and then they ended up making all these spin-off series and specials. I think it won an Emmy, the Meet the Raisins movie. It's like one of the original rock mockumentary style things. It's so funny.
I'm sure I saw that. I don't even remember that in particular, but I just remember the raisins being the biggest sensation in the world and loving them myself. I was not above the raisins by any means.
Oh, yeah, and then Burger King had all the little figurines and everything that you could get. I used to have so many of those, as a collection, and if you come to New York, you'll have to come over and we'll watch it because I still have that original VHS from Guantanamo, Cuba.
Well, that's an invitation I can't turn down, and for the audience, Van and I have known each other for years, and I did not know the Cuba story, so,
Oh,
what great
really? Yeah.
background.
Yeah, that's, like, where I remember life beginning was, like, running around barefoot, just a tan little child.
That's great. I part of the reason I use this as an opening question in pretty much every episode, Van, is that we have so much overlap in how we got into movies, but everybody has their specific thing.
It's almost
Right.
like why you have your favorite song or your favorite genre of music. You remember back to who you were at that time. and
Sure.
what it meant to you then, and then you just carry that your whole life long, I think.
And watching this movie again for the God, who knows how manyth time, it's like I can look at it as an adult, but I'm really a kid again watching it.
Totally.
I will be shocked if anybody who listens to this episode in particular has not seen this movie. But that said, in case they haven't seen it in a while, can you give us like the 20,000 foot overview of what Pee Wee's Big Adventure is all about?
Wow. Well, I like to frame it as a puzzle movie because it doesn't really teach you the rules of the world as much as you're just thrown into it, and maybe by the end, you have some perspective on the rules of it, but from the broad picture, I would say it is a young man a young
Of
man,
indeterminate age.
yeah, maybe a child, maybe not, we're not exactly sure, who has his favorite thing in the world is his bicycle. His bicycle is stolen, and he goes on a big adventure of a quest to get his bike back, and I'm not gonna spoil whether he gets it back or not, but that is the overview of what this tale is, and he encounters some of the wackiest characters ever known to screen. There's a kind of whimsy to it all. It's darkly funny, and it has a score by Danny Elfman. It is actually the first Tim Burton, Danny Elfman collaboration, and if you know anything about them, they've made several movies together where Danny Elfman did the music, Tim
To
Burton
great
directed.
effect.
I think it's probably still my favorite Danny Elfman score. It's so playful and wacky. It's sort of based off of the character that Paul Rubens had created, and I think had only done live at that point as part of, like, a sort of, like, comedy show that was almost
I
like
think
a
I think he was part of the Groundlings, right?
yes. So it started there, and then he did, like, his own kind of run of it in LA at a theater. I think Phil Hartman helped create some of the characters and the role, and I think he's credited as one of the co-writers of the film as well. But they decided to make this zany, wacky movie, and it's just one of the craziest, amazing things that I've ever seen, and I saw it at a very young age, and when I met Jeff, your brother, in college, he also loved the movie, and I think we watched it, if not every day sometimes, at least once a week of all of freshman year of college, and that's when I really understood how much I loved it. It was kind of like seeing it through your friend's eyes too, and we're learning about acting in theater school, and we're just kind of analyzing the choices of the actors and what they did with the dialogue and how zany it is, and just like it's just, like, darkly funny and hits this part of you that always makes you feel like you're a kid. I'm like a an adult who's, like, refused to grow up, so I think I think that that really hits me really hard about this film. So many personal connections to this movie, and I think that's why I love it so much, but the movie itself, I have a friend who I went to high school with, and she lives in London now, and I saw her last year when I was there for, I think it's called Fright Fest, for a film I scored, and I caught up with her, and we were talking about Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and she said she'd never seen it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she just texted me a couple days ago saying, "I finally saw it," and I'm so sad that I didn't get to see it as a kid, because I think it would mean a lot more to me than it does now watching it. She absolutely loved it. It's also her husband's favorite film, so she was doing 2 favors by watching it. But, she posed this interesting question. She said, like, "When you were a kid, did you think that Pee-wee was a kid, or did you think he was an adult, or did you think he was just, like, something otherworldly, like a clown or something?" And when you're a kid watching it, you kind of just accept things. So I don't think I thought really too deeply about it until I got older and realized that some of the actors in the movie are kids, and then some of the actors are other adults playing kids, but they have parents, and Pee-wee doesn't have parents.
Right.
So that's what I mean by it's like a puzzle movie. It's like you could watch it and be asking all these kinds of rule questions. But one of my favorite things about art is to say it's tools, not rules.
Oh, I like that.
Like you use your choices to get what you want, but you don't have to necessarily adhere to rules, and people can just go along with it too.
It's so interesting to me that you refer to this as a puzzle movie. I could see somebody equally thinking of this as a vibes movie, like just
Oh, for
thinking
sure.
that none of that matters.
Exactly, but I think because I've seen it so many times, you start to be like, "No, wait a minute, like, how did they come up with this? Like, somebody wrote this. I'm sure the questions came up. Were they just vibing? Maybe, for the sake of comedy." But the world is just so fascinating and colorful and somewhat specific. So I always have to wonder how far into it they got with the details. But I think that's also just, like, what kinda makes it funny and wacky. You could also just put it on and not even have the sound on and still have a good time just because of the visuals are vibes for sure.
Oh, absolutely. So this is going to maybe fly in the face of something you just said, but I think in a way that might spark something. I was thinking about as I watched this today. Roger Ebert, who I revere, wrote a lot about how great movies teach us to watch them in the first 5 minutes.
Yep.
Now, I totally agree with you that part of the beauty of this movie is there's so many surprises along the way, and I feel like I'm surprised even watching it for the 200th time. But that opening sequence is incredible, and I do think it teaches us something about this world. If I'm thinking of the dream going into the morning routine, so maybe that takes us just a little past 5 minutes.
And that's every kid's dream though, right? That way of waking up, all of the toys and the sort of like, the breakfast machine that makes his perfect breakfast, and it's all gadgets, and it's very energized too. The fireman pole he slides down, he's immediately dressed once he slides down. Like, there's the kind of, like, cartoon, like, Bugs Bunny aspect of it a little bit too, like, playing in the mirror with the toothpaste, um,
That's a
the
big thing that hit me as and hits me even now as a kid and frankly as an adult who likes making faces in the mirror and like enjoys kind of silly self-entertainment.
Yeah.
He spoke to me so much. Even though it's hard to say if he's a kid or an adult, I feel like there was an element of me that was like, "Oh, you can keep doing that? That isn't just a little kid thing?"
That is the spirit animal of Pee-wee, right? That he even though he grew up, he still behaves the way that you wish you would have known that you could when you were a kid almost, where he has, like, the smart alecky comments, and everything is fun, and everything's like a ride or a game to him. I'm just thinking about that bathroom scene too, because that's when you get the first bit of sort of plot for the movie when he goes on the scale and he gets, like, his daily ticket that comes out of it. That's sort of like his daily fortune, and it says, "Don't leave the house today," right? Like, that could be, like, easily overlooked, but that's just, like it seems funny in the moment, but really it's, like, the beginning of the plot of the movie. And that whole opening sequence ends with the reveal of the bike, and he's gonna leave the house and go on his daily errand run or whatever he's doing. And that the bike is almost like the ingenue of the story before you meet Dottie, because 'cause he's gotta save the damsel in distress, which becomes his bike.
That's an interesting point. He's resistant to Dottie as the potential love interest, and how much of that is because he's got his love.
And I think that's another thing that kids can relate to. It's like your favorite toy or your bike or whatever. You have such pride in showing that off and, like, your connection with that. And it can all seem, like, very basic and kind of childish, especially if you saw it when you were a kid or hopefully you had a happy childhood like that where you had those connections to those things and that kind of fantasy of playing around.
The dream that it opens with is so great to me in setting a few themes and the reality of this world that within that sequence, we see two different depictions of the Eiffel Tower that are not the Eiffel Tower itself, very importantly. It's like on a billboard, and then it's a model of it.
Right.
Um, and we
And there's, like, what, like 10, 20 people that are there,
right,
you know?
right, exactly. We're in the Tour de France, but it's
Yeah,
a
so
dozen people along a road.
to Ebert's point, like, it does teach you, like, is something is up with this movie, like, it's already taking liberties because you don't know it's a dream yet in that moment, you're just like, "Wait, what is this?"
But that's also to your point that it's like, "Hey, we're not gonna lead you around by the nose on this one. You have to keep up. It's
Totally.
coming at you."
I think that that whole Eiffel Tower thing too is so hilarious on a second watch once you've seen the whole movie because you can kind of forget that that happened because the breakfast machine sequence can kind of just take over as the opening in your mind, but it is so funny. And if you notice in the that it's not the bike that he has in the reality of the movie. In the dream, it's like some other red bike. There's like a lot of little things that are just like kind of off.
Right.
And it's very obvious that it's a dream on the second watch, but, I do think that that beginning just shows you, like, this is not like anything you've ever seen, and it's gonna be, like, scratching some, like, nostalgia, childhood kind of itch for you the whole rest of the film, which I think it really promises and delivers.
I can't remember the first time I saw this movie, so I can't say this for sure, but I almost feel like right from the initial scene, it gives you the feeling of, "Oh, I'm gonna have to watch this movie 10 times to get it." Like, in a good way, you know?
Yeah, well, it's like eye candy too, it's just, like, filled with things to look at, like, all the extras. My god, Jeff and I used to have such a good time just, like, picking out different extras and watching them for the whole scene, and they're kind of, like, all overacting and just making hilarious faces and choices. It's so funny.
This movie makes such great use of extras or one-line players throughout. It really does set the scene for that in an
Absolutely.
incredible way. I am often guilty of focusing overly on directors. Like, I just taught enough auteur theory, but you've already mentioned the idea that movies are such a collaborative effort. And I really want to get to Paul Rubens before we get too much into Tim Burton, because I don't want to
Yeah,
accidentally leave out the Paul Rubens of this.
yeah.
So this is way too broad a question, but what does he bring to this movie? What is it about him?
He had created this character that was so endearing and hilarious, and also had that sort of adult comic wink to it. That is just the perfect concoction, and I think that he's also in this film version, it gives him the opportunity to become very earnest in some of the more heartfelt moments, and I think that navigating that back and forth, it's like what gave Jim Carrey the wings that he later would have in The Mask. He just has such a specific kind of humor that not many people to this day have ever really tried to do. And I think that Pee-wee was his kind of alter ego in his own life to exhibit these joys and poking at the profoundness of life and situations and things like that. Not only is he funny and exuberant and almost like a cartoon character himself, but he does bring this humanity to it. For the audience, we all feel like, oh, that's me. It's like what any great protagonist does in a movie, but he's doing it in such a ridiculous way that you're not even expecting the truth that is coming out of the performance, if that makes any sense.
Oh, that makes a world of sense to me. That it is such a gift to be able to be this ridiculous, but somehow be relatable and truly be an audience surrogate, like you're talking about. And
Yeah.
I was actually thinking, and maybe shame on me for not thinking this before, but watching it today, I was thinking of like Buster Keaton and maybe even more so Harold Lloyd, and how like he takes some of the tools of silent actors. It's nearly impossible to add a voice to that and not mess it up, but he pulls
Yeah.
it off.
He really just found this character. I'm sure he had created tons of characters at the Groundlings, but this was the one, and he never let it go. Think of how much he wrung out of this character over the years. This movie was just the beginning, and in a lot of ways, it's my favorite version of it because of it keeping the sort of like, what is this film? What is this world? Whereas when he got to Pee-wee's Playhouse and we saw it like every week, it was like, welcome to my house. It was like the same set, same characters, same kind of setup. It was still very provocative and daring to make that. And then there's the other films that not quite my favorite in terms of the risks they were taking. You found this character that you could just do almost your whole life. He also did it on Broadway. That was when I was doing American Idiot on Broadway, and Billy Joe Armstrong's birthday and the Pee Wee on Broadway's closing night were at the same place. It was like a bowling alley party, and we were all just watching Billy Joe Armstrong and Pee Wee Herman talk to each other, and it was like, wow, 2 eras of our childhood colliding. Yeah, he did it so many times. I think that when you just find this kind of character, like, you're not gonna let it go. He didn't even need to reinvent his attitude at all. He just stayed this kid, this guy. It's incredible.
It's interesting to me, though, that within such a specific character, he still had room to navigate for different milieus. I know that, like, the original Groundlings work and the one-man show were somewhat risque,
Mhm.
and then, obviously, the Pee-wee's Playhouse, which we love Pee-wee's Playhouse, but it was a toned-down version of the character from this movie. It didn't have that sharp edge to it.
Right.
I
Yeah,
find that all the
not as
more
much, like, sexual innuendo as the original one had, yeah.
and I guess we can bring into the conversation now. Part of what's so interesting in this is those two sensibilities rubbing up against each other. And how does the, let's face it, somewhat ridiculous of Pee Wee work within the darkness of a Burton universe?
The characters that he comes up against in the film are much darker than anybody you would meet in Pee-wee's Playhouse, for sure. He has the escaped convict that he goes, on a ride with, and there's, like, the Large Marge sort of horror story of the truck driver who is dead and hasn't been seen in years.
And we get essentially a presaging of Beetlejuice in the large Marge moment when her face goes to
Totally.
stop motion.
Yeah, I once paused on that face, and I realized that the eyes are literally, cue balls
Oh, really?
for a pool game, yeah. And there's just a little dot drawn on them, and I think the whole thing was built around that. There's stuff that could really scare a kid in it, but I think it's packaged in such a way that it still feels like a kid's movie. Pixar does things like that too, like, they always try to have jokes that are gonna go over the kids' heads when they're watching it, and, like, the adults can chuckle at.
I
But this
feel like the innuendo could be a little heavier in the '80s than what you can get away with now, though, especially any kind of sexual innuendo.
but this just has straight up, like, seedy scenes. Think of when he's going to the fortune teller, and it's like a Hollywood backlot raining, and he almost gets mugged by some guys, and he actually scares them away because he's in such a bad mood because his bike's been stolen, and
And that scene's shot like M.
yeah, for sure. I mean, there's like a whole love letter to film going on in this with, Tim Burton's work.
I was thinking about that watching it tonight is there's a lot of things like that that I feel like were sort of genre bending tribute slash satirizing. And somehow as a kid, even though I didn't know all the precursors, that stuff worked for me and maybe in reverse got me into some of those things.
I think about that a lot in music when you find a favorite artist, or even if I write something that I like and then other people are like, "Oh, that reminds me of these 3 artists." And I'm like, "I don't even know who they are. Let me go find where that inspiration came from." I love inspiration in reverse like that. I think you're totally right. especially the nightmare sequences and things like that. I wasn't into horror as a 5-year-old, but I am now. It gave me, like, a little taste of something that's this fantastical.
So, with you mentioning that, I think we should talk a little bit about your ongoing relationship with this movie as an adult, because I know it goes beyond just watching it. So, what are some of the Pee Wee highlights of your life?
Wow, couple years ago, got married. Before that, had the bachelor party, which your brother Jeff threw for me,
That
and,
is that is a Glazer family thing, by the way. We have both thrown more than our fair share of bachelor parties.
oh, he was so proud to. He even said, "I don't even need to be your best man, I just wanna throw the bachelor party." I was like, "Bro." All of the guys that were going on the trip had been in contact without me knowing. So the second day that we're there, I wake up with a slight hangover from the first night and am thrown a Pee Wee Herman costume that's in the packaging, and Jeff says, "Put this on." I was like, "What?" And I look around and I see that every other person at the bachelor party is dressed as a different character from Pee Wee's Big Adventure. That's when you know your friends really love you and know you. I was like, "Oh my god, they're gonna put me in my favorite movie." I didn't even know what was coming, but so I get dressed, and Jeff's like, "There's a car that's gonna pick us up and drive us somewhere, but I'm not telling you where it is. It's a couple hours away." And so we all suited up, ate handfuls of mushrooms, got in a van, and halfway through the trip, it dawns on me, and I say, "Wait, are we going to the Alamo?" Everyone starts dying laughing in the van. It's like a 15-passenger van. The driver didn't know what he was getting into. He was like, "What is happening here?" We had Large Marge, we had the convict, we had Francis, we had Dottie. Jeff was the, hobo on the train that sings the songs.
I didn't
Big
realize that's what Jeff did. I was thinking about watching that tonight, that Jeff and I had, like, a Disney album that had all those songs on it as kids. That was like an American folk songs, Disney
Oh,
album.
yeah. It's one of my favorite scenes in the movie too, because he's singing and he hits his highest note, but in the melody of the song, the melody goes higher on the next note. But because he's already singing at the top of his lungs on the lower note, he just sings the same note full blast, but he, like, cannot get up to the pitch. We've died laughing about that for hours. So we pull up to the Alamo, all pile out of this van, and we get in line, and everybody's treating us like celebrities because most people know that that's where Pee-wee's bike was supposed to be, in the basement at the Alamo. And
That's
so
it's interesting you say that, because one of the things about this movie that I think about is how often has something this weird saturated the culture the way this movie has for 40 years now?
I know, and bringing some kind of odd joy to something that's, like, kind of sad, which is the this battle and this remaining bunker, whatever, that's been turned into a museum. Is like quite a dark historical place that should be observed with some reverence, but they have a Pee-wee bike figurine in the gift shop at the Alamo. You know what I mean? It is like a cultural tome, but I can't tell you the feeling that I had tripping, mind you, and complete strangers coming up to me saying, "Did you find your bike?" And we got all kinds of videos of me, like, running around like I was Pee-wee when he finds out that there's no basement at the Alamo, and he runs out and everybody's laughing at him, and yeah, epic story with that. And so I had the Pee-wee suit, and when Paul Rubens passed away, I believe it was a couple of months before Halloween, so I decided to go as dead Pee-wee for Halloween that year,
I feel
and
he would have been honored by that.
I hope so. So I did kind of like a zombie-esque face makeup and just wore the suit, but what was funny was half of the people that saw me thought I was Beetlejuice,
Appropriate.
eh, because of the suit. I mean, it wasn't the stripes, but yeah, I definitely did get some, "Oh my god, he's dead Pee-wee. That's dark." But you saying that I hope Pee Wee would have, appreciated that. I did actually meet Paul Rubens when we were in college at the Color Purple on Broadway, the original one,
Oh, interesting.
at the opening night party, and I saw him putting food on his plate at the buffet table, and I can't remember exactly what I said, but I did say how much I loved Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and that I think we watched it almost every day freshman year, that all my friends bonded over it, and we loved it so much and got so much joy and inspiration out of it, and his only response was, "Why?"
Did you have a feeling he was pulling your leg, or was that a genuine not understanding why that would be so important to you?
I mean, it was a little bit of both. I'm ultimately an optimistic person, so I was just kinda like, "Alright, cool, good to meet you," and then walked away. But I do think the more I've learned about him and his sense of humor over the years, I do think he was trying to mess with me.
You've mentioned Quest a couple of times, and like this is definitely a picaresque movie. It's a movie of sequences and vignettes.
Yeah.
Something you said there really hit me. This idea of like, oh, 45 minutes ago, we were watching a machine make this kid's breakfast. Oh, and we were just
Yeah.
delighted. And that may be part of the rewatchability of how does it get us from here to there?
Think about that early scene on the sidewalk with Francis, where they're setting up their sort of conflict with each other, that he's like Pee-wee's nemesis or whatever. And it's like almost every catchphrase of the '90s came out of that scene.
Right.
You know what I mean? It almost feels like an SNL sketch or something, where he laughs so hard that he literally falls on the sidewalk and has to pick himself up. And the choices are so broad. But then later on in the film, there's like a romance scene with him and Simone inside the head of a brontosaurus or whatever it is, and they're, like, talking deeply about dreams or whatever, and Pee-wee doesn't really get the depth of what she's talking about, or she's like, "You ever have dreams, Pee-wee?" And he's like, "Yeah, there's a snake wearing a vest, and he's
That
rolling
line
a
blows
big
me
donut."
away. That line blows me away because it feels like nothing, but you stop and think about it, and it's like, wait, a snake couldn't wear like a vest runs exactly counter to a snake. Like, how does that
Yeah.
even work?
Yeah, I've always thought about it too, where it's like, is the snake's body where a human's body would be in a vest, or is the snake running through the sleeves of the vest?
Oh, good point. It and I'm thinking back to like Robin Hood, the Disney animated Robin Hood, and it's like, well, a snake
Uh-huh.
can wear a cape, of course, because a cape ties off, but a vest.
But that's like the genius of those jokes. They're just like one-liners, but repeated listens of them, it will get you thinking, "What did they mean?" Or is that the point of the joke that, like, you can't even picture it? It's so fun, and the seriousness of the adult characters. I'm thinking of Chuck, the bike store owner. It seems like a spy movie where he gathers all the local people in the bike store, and he has the model of the town, and he's trying to get everybody to search for his bike.
Yeah,
And,
and
like
another Hollywood that suddenly we're in like the guns of Navarone of like planning this mission. Yeah.
yeah, and it's just so serious. And even Pee-wee gets serious there, where he says, "Do you have something to share with the rest of us, Amazing Larry?" And it's so sad. Amazing Larry was cut out of the movie. He actually had more of a scene in the magic shop.
I have
But
heard
the
that. I think I heard them talk about that on Blank Check, one of my favorite podcasts, when they
oh,
covered this
yeah.
movie. But I will say, I kinda love that we just get this one
Me
shot of a
too.
guy with wild hair, and we know he's called Amazing Larry, and we know nothing else.
Me too. It's so specific. And it just kinda just goes to show, like, the fine detail work of making this movie and these characters, that they all have kind of like a backstory, and you might only need one shot of them to see their specificity in the movie.
I remember a writing teacher I had in middle school saying essentially, and this is paraphrasing, but that you need to be brave enough to not explain everything.
Yeah.
And I feel like Burton and Rubens here are brave enough to not explain this world in full, to not explain who Amazing Randy is, to not
Yeah.
really explain the central conceit.
I think that you have to leave room for questions and further viewings. That's what makes a good movie to me, where it's not fully explained or at least like gets you talking afterwards. My least favorite thing is when you see some art and somebody's like, it's pretty good. I want you to either love it or hate it so that we can discuss this, you know?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. That sometimes the things that leave you neutral just aren't interesting to talk about. And like sometimes something that I hate, especially if I know others love it, like those are really worthy of viewing again or talking about. You
For
know,
sure.
if it's just terrible, that's one thing. If everybody just thinks it's terrible.
For sure.
But yeah, it's that neutral is the killer.
Well, I mean, we're both film people. I took an intro to film class at Fordham, and it completely taught me a new way of looking at especially older films and understanding the context of when they came out and what the language with the world was at the time, why they made that. But context is everything with a movie. I'm not really interested in the thing of the moment, popcorn, just entertain me, get me in and out kind of thing. I want like a dialogue with with the film. Like I want to be stirred up from it.
Absolutely. I've never actually taken a film class. But I feel very lucky that my grandmother and my mother loved movies so much. We just lost my grandmother recently, and my mother
Right.
still loves movies, and they introduced me even before TCM was a thing, like, when old movies would play on UHF channels at 10 o'clock at night, we'd watch
Yeah.
those together, and I feel like it gave me that level of appreciation. Not that either of them were so technical, but, "Oh, here's a thing you can do in a movie, and here's something else you can do in a movie." And maybe why even seeing Kiwi Young, I probably couldn't have consciously said, "Oh, that's emulating this," but I had a little bit of a feel for that already.
But it's like cracking open your imagination as a young person. And because it is actually a really great movie, and when you're young, you're seeing all kinds of things that are made for kids, quote unquote, that it really does stand out and it like burns something into your into your psyche that hopefully will help as you get older and you're like, wow, that like really set me up on my own big adventure, you know?
When I was originally thinking about ideas for this podcast, one of my first ideas was to do a podcast on movies that are about movie making. And this maybe isn't as explicitly so as something like Day for Night or The Player, but there is a degree, and not just because of this sequence, that this feels like a movie about filmmaking. So in particular, because I have you on as a multi-hyphenate creative, interested in what you see in that, what this movie says about creativity and how it might inspire creativity in others.
I mean, the sort of jumping genres throughout the film at a moment's notice definitely lends itself to bold kind of filmmaking and storytelling. And whether or not it directly is comping a certain style or not, it's definitely alluding to it. You have like the sort of boy girl meet cute, you have the adventure sections, you have these expansive shots, like when he's in the dinosaur park at night, and it's something that you could only experience in a film unless you're physically there. And I think that the way that the music is so quirky and kind of holds the hand of the film as it goes. There's something about it feeling very surreal that I think a lot of great films can do, especially just a sequence or 2 or something where they're sort of proving to you this is a good movie because I could only tell this story in this way in a film,
Oh,
right?
what a great definition of art there. That specificity of there are a lot of ways to do this, but to tell this story or get across this emotion, this is the way.
Like, how brave when you think of these creative people that made this movie and it being sort of the beginning of their careers, it really shows just like the courage that they had early on in a very kind of rock and roll attitude of, I'm doing it my way this time. Not that it's void of the comparisons to the other films of the time. It's definitely using filmic language throughout, but I just think it's like incredibly bold and just cool. The style of it is unlike anything. We now know Tim Burton to be such a visionary for the visuals and the way that he tells a story, but this was like his first one, and I think one of the best and the wackiest for sure.
One that most clearly draws on his background as an animator too, which makes sense as he had just made the transition to live action.
Like, the technology they had to make it was not expensive either at the time.
No, no, I don't think the budget on this one was huge. I didn't look up exact numbers, but, I think they had to make things like the cue ball thing that you brought to the table
Yeah,
brought me in that way of like, "Hey, these are on hand. We can get cue balls cheap."
totally, or, like, what are we gonna do for this Eiffel Tower dream sequence? It's like, cardboard cutouts, please. That's what gives the film its style and its language,
No, and
like,
it's like
having the
cardboard cutouts
constraints.
and it's like cardboard cutouts, so are we gonna shoot them fuzzy in the background so people think it's the Eiffel. No, 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 we're just gonna show that they're cardboard cutouts.
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many little close-ups and things in this movie that you could almost see the electrical tape holding it together. But that's what gives it its charm, and also, you don't need a huge budget to make magic. That's just not what it's about. Like, having constraints really kind of makes you get more out of the box with your ideas, and it helps to me.
And this has been great stuff about Pee-wee. One of the things we like to do as we get to the end of an episode here is throw out some movies that we think fans of this movie might like. What are some that you have in mind?
Well, I'm gonna start with a movie that I don't love. I love maybe the first third of it, but I will leave it up to your viewers whether they love it or not, and that is the newest film on my list, which is Barbie.
Okay.
I feel like is highly inspired by the Pee-wee kind of visual take. I don't really love where the movie ends up, but I loved, like, the first 30 minutes of Barbie because it reminded me so much of Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
I am right with you on that. And I didn't dislike it, but it was one of those slightly frustrating things of, oh, it's such a great director and such great stars. It could have been better.
Yeah, it just was holding my hand a little bit too much. Again,
Yeah.
I love a puzzle. I need the puzzle. I'll also say The Mask,
Oh, great
which
one.
I mentioned earlier, just because of it being so fun and almost like a cartoon. Obviously, Beetlejuice.
Of course.
Another movie around that time that has another kind of whimsy to it, but it just feels like it was made on the same film stock or something, is Drop Dead Fred.
Oh, I haven't seen that forever.
I'm not even sure if it holds up or not, but the movie itself will put you in the same feeling, uh, I think, that Pee-wee does. So it just feels like that same era. I think they were made not too many years apart. And then a newer film that I think kind of has the dark and light and is very zany is Swiss Army Man.
Oh, I need to see that. That has been on my list
Yeah, you
forever
do.
now.
You do. It's highly ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. But I'll never forget seeing it in the theater and just being like, "I can't believe they made this."
Excellent. I had a few on my list here. First of all, if we're talking Paul Rubens, I have to throw out Mystery Men. As a
Oh,
kid
wow.
who, or a teenager at that point who loved superheroes, like that movie has its flaws. It's far from perfect, but like a bunch of 90s stars and Paul Rubens in is kind of the veteran presence.
Totally.
Really enjoy. Gremlins from right around the same year that has
Love
a
Gremlins,
similar, it's not the same as this, but it's a similar kind of anarchic comic energy to it.
for sure.
And then what I thought of as we were talking and as you brought up the quest idea is, "Oh brother, where art thou?"
Yeah, that's a good, reference.
You know, different energy, but very much a movie of vignettes, a movie about this overall quest. Of course, famously based on the Odyssey, but they said they didn't actually read the Odyssey, whether that's true or not.
We could talk about movies for hours.
We could, but for the sake of the audience, we'll go ahead and suspend this conversation until next time you're on. And maybe we'll have
Can't
to do a
wait.
special episode then that we don't pick a movie and it's just me and you going free form. Like come
I would
in,
love
no
that.
preparation.
I would love that.
Well, Van, thank you so much for joining us today. Excited that you've got new music coming out, which we're certainly gonna get links out there for our audience on. Couldn't have had more fun doing this.
Oh, this was a blast. Thank you for having me. What fun.
Absolutely. See you soon.
See you, buddy.
That's it for this one, folks. I'm Brad Glazer. I host, produce, and edit the show. Thanks as always to the Brain Trust for making it happen, especially to my wife, Morgan Fairchild, aka Julia Mott. The music you hear at the beginning of the show and now is by my friend Richard Bates and his band, The Huns. That's Hons. You can find The Huns music on Bandcamp. Check them out and check out Richard's new album, Bates and Sons and Daughters, as well. This Wednesday, we're going to have the rare Timely episode. Crystal Kaufman, the better Kaufman, is joining me to talk The Devil Wears Prada in advance of the sequel, which comes out May 1st. God knows the good people at 20th need me promoting their movie for free. They don't seem to have any marketing budget behind this one. Please follow, rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, all the things. You can follow us on Instagram at Your Favorite Flick, on Letterboxd at Favorite Flick, or shoot us an email at yourfavoriteflick@gmail.com. Huns, take us out.
Made crazy, stupid money for crazy, stupid things. Is that any part of keeping your heart? If I spent those same days brushing up on poetics, that's 14 times 365 inflection.